I was born and raised on the farm, molded by dirt, sweat, and the blazing sun. This land isn't just where I live, it's my heritage. Sadly, it happens to sit uncomfortably close to a development ruled by a power-hungry HOA called Shadow Creek, *now. Don't get me wrong, I don't despise all the folks in that community. A few are actually decent. We've shared cold beers, swapped stories along the fence line, even laughed together. But no peaceful place stays peaceful forever. Sooner or later, trouble finds a way to grow, *, and in this case, trouble had a name. Grace, Grace, the self-anointed queen of Shadow Creek, HOA President, clipboard wielder, rulebook preacher. With a personality as dry as sandpaper, *, it was the end of a long day, 12 hours of hauling feed, fixing the tractor and rounding up an escapee goat. I pulled into my gravel driveway exhausted, only to see her standing at my gate as if she earned every inch of soil beneath it, * clipboard in hand. Lips pursed. Eyes locked on me like a sheriff about to issue a warrant. * I climbed out of my truck, boots still caked with manure, my neck burning from the sun. I wasn't in the mood. * Evening. I said, wiping the sweat from my brow. * She didn't smile. Instead, she looked down at her papers and asked, "Mr. Bennett?" "That's me," I replied. "I'm here on behalf of the Shadow Creek HOA board. We've received reports of unauthorized commercial activity taking place on this property, specifically illegal Airbnb rentals. As president of the HOA, I'm required to investigate." *, I blinked at her. "Ma'am, this is a farm. Nobody's vacationing next to chickens and cow manure." *, she didn't flinch. "We take community standards seriously. If your property falls under the zoning buffer, we have inspection rights. You may not realize, but your cabin was part of the original Shadow Creek boundary map." That was pure nonsense, and she knew it. But she wanted in, and I wasn't about to open that gate. Her face twitched like she couldn't believe anyone would dare tell her no. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again like her brain was buffering. Finally, she muttered, "Refusal to cooperate will result in legal consequences." Before scribbling furiously on her clipboard, *, I just leaned on the post and watched. She was used to neighbors who cowered when she cleared her throat, not someone who stood his ground, *. Then she started snapping pictures of my land like she was assembling an FBI file. "Unpermitted structures," she said out loud, aiming her phone at my woodshed. "Possible code violations. Animal safety concerns." "That's a chicken coop," I said flatly. "The only hazard here is you." She ignored me, stomped back to her SUV, and before peeling out she shouted, "Expect a full inspection. I'll be bringing the board." As if she was assembling the HOA Avengers. The very next day my neighbor Frank texted me, "Bro, Grace is raising hell at the meeting. Claims you're running a secret Airbnb and hiding unregistered dogs." *, I just sent back a laughing emoji and kept hauling hay. But I knew Grace wasn't bluffing. She wasn't the type to make idle threats. She was the type who actually enjoyed reading her HOA handbook for fun. * 3 days later, I had to leave town to pick up tractor parts. I figured things might cool down while I was gone. I locked up. The cabin hung fresh private property and beware of dog signs and topped off the feeders. My 2 dogs, Bear and Grizzle, roam the property as usual. * They aren't killers, but they're excellent at making trespassers regret their choices. * What I didn't expect was for Grace to return that very afternoon. She must have noticed my truck was gone and thought she had the green light. No witnesses, no resistance, just her clipboard, and her fantasy of absolute power. Problem was, she wasn't alone, halfway upstate. My phone buzzed with a notification. Motion sensor triggered at the east gate. At first I assumed it was a deer or bear chasing squirrels again. But when I opened the live feed and saw that all too familiar purple blouse squeezing through my fence, clipboard clutched like a badge of authority, my blood boiled. * Grace had actually trespassed. Broad daylight. Bold as ever. * She even ducked under one of my cameras, muttering to herself as she marched toward the cabin. This woman didn't just ignore signs, she declared war on them. * Asterisk, what she didn't know was that cameras weren't my only line of defense. Asterisk, Bear and Grizzle had been lounging under the porch. The moment Grace set foot on the gravel path, both dogs perked up like radar dishes locking onto a target. Asterisk, I watched as she pushed through the second gate, the one with the huge red sign that read, "Do not enter, guard dogs on duty." She either didn't see it or didn't care. Either way, she'd just made a serious mistake. Asterisk, Bear was the first to charge. He's lightning fast but silent until the very last second. Grace didn't even notice until he was 5 feet away. She shrieked, stumbled backwards, tripped over her own clipboard, and landed flat on her back in the dirt. Asterisk, Grizzle followed, barking like a demon unchained. Asterisk, they didn't go for the kill, they're trained better than that. But they weren't about to roll over and play fetch either. She left with a bite on her leg, a scratch on her arm, shredded clothes, and enough slobber to soak her blouse. She scrambled away, shrieking like her empire had just crumbled. Asterisk, I immediately called 911, explained the situation, and shared the footage live. Dispatch told me to stay on the line while emergency services headed out. Asterisk, by the time I got home, paramedics were treating her at the edge of my property. She was ranting about rabies, lawsuits, and assault by canine, even though she was the one who broke in. Asterisk, the sheriff pulled me aside and said calmly, "Don't worry, we saw everything." Asterisk, of course, Grace did what Grace always does. She pressed charges. She claimed I had unleashed vicious dogs on an innocent citizen fulfilling her neighborhood duties. Asterisk, she even limped into court with a crutch she didn't need, bandages covering scratches that had already healed, and that same smug clipboard tucked into her oversized purse like some cursed relic. Asterisk, what she didn't have was jurisdiction, evidence, or a legal leg to stand on. Asterisk, turns out my land isn't just outside the HOA, it was never included in their development zones at all. Her so-called zoning buffer was nothing more than HOA make-believe. Asterisk, the judge looked over the footage, Grace stepping past private property signs, ignoring the beware of dogs warnings, bypassing gates and trespassing on camera. He didn't even let her lawyer finish before dismissing the case. Asterisk, I could have sued her for trespassing, defamation, attempted fraud, you name it. I could have drained her bank account with legal fees alone. Asterisk, but I didn't want revenge. I wanted peace. Asterisk, so instead I filed for a restraining order. Grace is now legally prohibited from coming within 300 feet of my property. My mailbox, my tractor, my goats, and yes, even my scarecrow. Asterisk, because her injuries came from her own negligence. The county fined her for zoning violations and for wasting emergency services. Asterisk, the HOA, desperate to save face, suspended her from the board. But the real nail in the coffin? Someone leaked the video. Asterisk, first it hit Facebook, then TikTok, then the local town newsletter under the headline, Asterisk, HOA Karen mauled by country justice. Asterisk, peace, return to my farm. The gates are locked, the cameras are rolling, and Grace, well, she finally learned the hard way what happens when you trespass where you don't belong. Asterisk, the end.